Hey guys, Gary here. Welcome to Saving Objects to SQLite Part 2. In the first video that I posted, I showed you how to take an object and save it to a SQLite database file by changing it to a JSON string and then saving it into the file. And that works fine. This time I thought I would work on improving the mobility of this ability, because last time most of our code was done in the background page behind our main page XAML, and that's fine to make it simple to understand what's going on. However, if you need to take this and put it into another app, you don't want to have to rewrite all the code again and start from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on this database handler file so that you can just take this file over to the new app and put in your new information. So let's see how that's going to work. The first thing we're going to do is, I don't like the name objects for this folder. I haven't from the beginning. So I'm going to use a different naming convention. And I'm actually going to rename that folder to models. And then you just want to go over to your code behind page after that and hit Control F and just type in objects. Make sure you have a capital O and an S at the end. And then type in models on the bottom and replace all for your current project. Now if you have the same example that we're using here, you'll have 8 occurrences replaced, and that should take care of everything for you. Now you'll be able to look through and actually see the difference between models of car and the object that we're passing in and out of different things. So that's to start with. Then we're going to go to our database file here, and we're going to start with this. I'm going to add some regions in here to sort of divide everything up and make it simple. Now in order to add a region, you just hit Shift and pound and then R, and you'll see it'll pop up region. You just hit Tab twice and you could put in the name of your region. So the name of my first region is going to be declarations, and I'm going to put the rest of these in real quick just to save a little bit of time, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I added a few regions here. As you can see, I have 3 basic top-end regions. I have declarations, I have external methods, and internal methods. Your external methods are going to be all the methods that are accessible outside of this class, and the internal methods are all the methods that are accessible from inside this class. Now inside of your internal methods, I have 2 regions. One's called convert object to string, and one's called convert string to object. Underneath the external methods, I have create database, I have one that's write to database, one that's read to database, one that's build field object, and I have those all together. And then inside of those, on the read from database, you'll have return all records and save records. So you can see how that trees down and allows you to fold everything kind of back up, and then you'll be in a nice neat little package. Now after that, we still have our old code here, but after the public class database, if we shrink that down and hit enter a couple of times, here we can add a region, and this region is going to be called database field object class. Okay, now in order to save time, I have most of the code imported in here, and I'm going to try to go through it with you rather than you sitting here through me typing. So to start with, for our declaration, the only line that's in here is going to be our SQLite data connection, and it's almost the same exact way, except instead of using cars database, where it's just that's what your file name is going to be called no matter what, we want to be able to give the new app an opportunity to change the file name accordingly to whatever the new app is. And we're going to do that by creating a new variable. If we go over to our app XAML page and we want the code behind for that, open that page up. And what I'll do is just go to Edit, Outlining, and Collapse to Definitions. Go to the very last line and hit enter a few times. Give yourself some space and add a region, global variables. And inside here, we're just going to have one global variable, and that's going to be public string database file name equals, and in this case, we're just going to make it cars so that it's the same thing as what we had before. Now, you can go in here when you write your new app, and you just add this section to your new app, and then you can change this to whatever you want it to be for the new app. But since we're going to stick on the same model that we used originally, we'll leave that at cars right now. So just save that. And that's the only time we're going to need to come into this file, so we can close that file out. And now you'll see that we no longer have a red squiggly up here. The way you access that is by this section of code right here, app.current as app dot, and then it'll bring up showing you a list of your variables that you added. So when you hit dot here, you'll see database file name. Okay, so now that's going to equal cars, and then we're just going to add by a space plus space, and then in quotation marks the .db. That's going to add the file ending for you, so that they can just enter in whatever title they want. They don't need to worry about the file ending. It'll always be db. You can see the change from that one, and we can get rid of that. And that's all that's going to go in your declarations. So then in the next section, in our external methods, we'll have create database. Now under create database, our original database method, we had a SQL string, and it's just create table if not exists, and then whatever the table name is. And then we have ID integer. So ID is the field name, integer is the field type, and this is our primary key. It's auto incremented and it's not null. So that one you want to have on every table that you're going to put in here. So that part's going to stay exactly the way it is. And then for the next field that we add, we want to add our object field. So we have the name of the field, which is car, the type of field, which is varchar, and then we want to make sure it's not null so that there's always something there. Now this is the only line we're going to change. And if we look at the new version of it here, we'll see that we need to add in the beginning string.format, and that allows us to format our string and add our variables into the string. And then it'll be create table if not exists, and then we'll put this little squiggly zero squiggly, that's a place marker for a variable. So we'll put that there so we can add our table name. And then under where it had car varchar, we're going to have the name of the field here, the type of the field. Make sure that you leave this space in here, otherwise it won't work correctly, and you want the space here also. And then all we do is we put a comma at the end, and you type in table name, which we bring into the method up here. We added two things that we needed for inputs. We needed the table name and we need a database field, which we called field. Now database field is going to be what we're going to add down here, the class we'll add down here. Now this is a pretty simple class. We'll just type it in quick. It's going to be public class database field. And in here we're going to have two properties. So prop tab string. I'm going to call this field type. Enter, enter. Oh, that should be string, not stack. And then we need one other one. String field name. Enter, enter. And that's it. So this, you'll notice, is outside of the class that we're working in. So we're working in class database. And outside of that, we made that new region. And in that new region, we have a completely different class. If you go over to the right side here, under the database file, and do the drop down, you'll notice there's actually two classes here now. Now normally you like to keep the classes separate in separate files, but in this case we want to be able to take this over to a new app, so we want to try to keep everything as compact as possible. So that's why we just added it to the end here. So that's it for that. You can just shrink that down, and you'll notice that in our code that we're working on, it now no longer has the red squiggly. And when you go to put in your field file name, just typing field dot, and you'll see right here it shows you field name. So when they create a database field, it'll be able to put the field name and the field type right in here. Now this is just set up for one object to be saved to the database. You can do multiple objects if you like, but then you run into a little bit more logistics as far as what you're bringing in and what you're sending out. So the easiest way to do it would be to do like this, just one single object. And let's say, for example, the car. If you had other objects like the suspension, the tires, the engine, the transmission, and you wanted to save them to the database, an easy way to do that would be to take all those and put them into one class and let them or in one object called car, and then just use that object car to save. And then once you get the object back, you can always split it apart back into your separate objects if you need to. Everything else in this stays the same. We did add here a string because we're going to return a string back to the caller, and that string is nothing more than your SQL statement. And that part is only for this example so that we can show on the main page exactly what this will look like once it's formed. You don't really need that for anything else. It's really just for show. So this, you wouldn't need it for normal production, but we'll leave it in there and I'll show you what that's for later on. So we can get rid of the old one of this. Next we have our write record, and it was pretty simple for the last program. It's not too much more difficult for this one. The first thing you're going to notice is you need to pass in a few things. Here we only passed in the string of car, and for this one we actually need to send in the first thing we need to send it is the type of object that we're going to be saving. So it doesn't know what object it is because you're taking this and putting it into any app, and it doesn't know what the outside app wants to save. It just, you want to save an object. So you let it know what the object type is, in which case it'd be models car, and it would find that, and then it would know how to set it up. So there you want to send in the actual object type. So we just name it my object type. And then you want to send in the actual object. And that object is of type, whatever the type is that we're passing in, my object type. So that's why you have it this way, my object type, my object. And then you need to send in a string called table name and your database field. We'll call it field again, so that we can enter those variables into our SQL statement. And then the first thing we need to do is add a string, and we'll call it my object string, and we'll equal that to convert object to string, and then this will be a method that we're going to add. We already had that method before, but we're going to change it around a little bit. We're going to make it so that it accepts in the object type. So we're sending the object type and then the object we want to convert. And that will return a string. So then we'll have everything in JSON string ready to go for our database. Then we create our database, our SQL database statement. And again, we have our string format. And in here we have insert into, you can see on the original one, insert into car info. Car info is the table name that we're going to save to. And in table name, in car info, we want to save to the car field. So in car info, we want to save car and give it a value of whatever we're passing in, car, that string. So we're kind of doing the same thing here. Insert into car info, but we're going to pass that through as table name. So that's why we use the squigglies. For the field name, we're going to take that from the database field that we created, and we're going to do field name. And then the value that we're doing is the my object string that was returned from the converter. So that's the actual string that'll create an object from. And the only real catch here is make sure that you put the single quotes inside of here. You'll see here we have single quotes, we have double quotes, we have plus signs, and then we have the car. We don't need any of this, but we do need the single quotes on either side of that name when we pull it in that way. And then we just prepare and we step through it. And that's it. It'll write the code right into the database. So that's writing your record. Not too difficult. Then we have reading our record. Well, originally when we did this, we wanted to do a search, and we'd searched for the ID or the track name or whatever. This time we're going to do it slightly differently. We'll just take this and we will get rid of it. And let me go through this for you. To read the database, we have two different sections. One time we're going to return all the records, and the other time we're going to search for a record. So we'll start with returning all records. It's a public method, and we're going to return a list of my object type. So there again, we're telling it that we're going to send it the object type and let it know what type of object it is. And this is going to be called return all records. And here's where we're actually going to send in the object type. So this knows we're going to return an object type of whatever object type we send in. Hope that makes sense to you. This is what we're sending it, letting it know what the type of the object is, and this is where we're sending a list of those objects back. Then we need a string, which is our table name again. We need a string for file name. Now you could do it the same way we did up here and pass in the field and then take it from there, or we can just send the string by itself, which is why I did it this way, just so you can see there's two different ways. And then lastly, we need a string called myObjectPath. Now myObjectPath is going to be used to find the actual object in your project. And this has to be a fully qualified address. So it's going to include object to SQLite UWP dot models dot car instead of just dot models and dot car, because it doesn't know where, if you're going to get this from in your project or online, or where you're going to get it from. So now when we open this method up, it's not too difficult. We start with a variable called myObjectList because that's what we're going to return, and we know that's a new list of my object, or of my object type, sorry. And that's just getting it ready for us. Then we need a string called myObjectString, and it's just quotes so that it's cleared out. If anything's left in it from anything else, you know that you're starting fresh. Now you can do it this way, or you can just do that it equals string.empty. Some people prefer that. Both ways work fine. Okay, then we have our SQL string we have to build for grabbing our records. So we're going to start again with our string format, and this will put everything in quotation or in parentheses. And then we have our actual string, so it's select star from, and then we'll just use parentheses and we'll pull table name from what they entered in. So whatever table name we have, we're going to select every record from there. And then we create our SQLite statement and get it prepared to be worked, so it gets it all ready for SQL. And then instead of stepping right away, we'll step in a while loop. So we'll take while our statement steps through, check to see if it's a row, if the results are a row. So for every row that it returns, we'll take myObjectString, and it will look at that row and find that field name, the field name that we centered in. That's the field name we're going to look at for our results. So it's be car. So we'll for each one we're going to look at the car field name, and then here myObjectList.add. So we're going to take our list, we're going to add a new object to it, and since we're going to add an object to it, and we're going to send an object back, all we're getting in is a string from our database. So once we have our strings in here, we convert the string to an object. We send it what kind of object we want to convert it to, which it pulls directly from here. It just drops it right down in. And then we send in the object string we want to convert and the object path so we can find out what we're converting it into, what type of object we're converting it into. And that'll return us back our object. And it'll just take whatever that field name is, and it'll take that object and then put the object on the list. So it doesn't care which one it is. It's not searching for anything specific. It's just every one of them. It'll pop through. It'll find that field name. It'll convert that field name into an object again. You know, take the object that's under car, and it'll convert it back to an object, and then return the object through the object list. So it just keeps adding them on, and then it returns back the object, and that's it. Then when you get it back, you just take a list of objects and you can put it into a list view or something, and we'll see about that in a little bit. So that's all there is to returning all the records. Now if we want to search for a record, here we'd have to we're going to return back one object, and it's going to be of my object type, and we'll call it search records, and then we'll enter in what object type we want to return as. So these are the object type we're going to work with. And then we'll need a string called table name, and we'll need a string for field name. We'll need our object path again as a string. And we'll need two extra ones. We'll need a field to search, so it knows which field it wants to search, and then the actual search string. Now, we open this up, and we start with a string called myObjectString and make sure it's empty. Then we go to our SQL statement, which is basically the same one we had for all records. We're just pulling all the records from whatever table name. And then we are getting it prepared to work. And then we have our while loop again, and it's going to search for each row. So every time it finds a new row, it'll say, okay, myObjectString equals whatever field name you're sending it. So if it's car, then it'll take out whatever's in car, and it'll get it ready and turn it into a string and make it myObjectString. Then we take myObjectType, myObject. So we need to create a new object to put this string into. Once we convert the string to an object again, we need to have an object to put it into. And since we don't know what kind of object it's going to be, we have to create it now. So we take whatever object type we sent in this case car, and we want to create a new object of that object type, so a new car object. And the way we do that is by putting the object type in parentheses. There's no dot here. It's just activator. So it's telling activator that we want to take this object type. We want to create an instance of that object. And then it says type, get type. And this is so that it actually shows the exact path to the car object, so it knows how to build that object, how to make that object. Then we go on with myObject. Now we have an object that we can work with, and we want to fill it with an object. So then we convert our string to an object. We send in, let it know what type of object we want it to turn that string into. Now this object must be the same type of object that the string was created from. So you can't create one object of car and then later on have another app or another part of the app where you have an object of plane, let's say, and you want to have the information from the car put into the plane. I've seen it work when everything is exactly the same. Like if all you did was change this name from car to plane, but everything else is exactly the same, it might work. But for the most part, just consider it that you need to have the same object in as you're going to get back out. So, and then you're going to send your object string and your definite path. You're going to pass those along to the converter so that it knows what to do. It'll return you back an object and you'll be good to go. Now we have property info, and it's giving me a red flag, and that's okay. Just click her down, and it's because it belongs to using system reflection. So we'll let it add that using statement, and that'll take care of that problem. We named it prop, which I don't like because prop is the shortcut for adding a property. But in the example that I found the information in a long time ago, that's what they used for it, so I just kind of stuck with it for now. So we have property info called prop. We can even do prop info is probably a little bit more intuitive for this. We just need to add it down here. And property info, we're going to get the property information of the field. So we take the object type that we have and we get the property of whatever field you're searching. So it'll, if you're searching for the make of a car, here you have your car and you need the field. So if you're searching for the make of the car, it's going to find the make. If you're searching the model of the car, it's going to find the model. So it'll find the object, and it'll say if the object that it finds, whatever's under there, like let's say we entered make in and we passed make in as our field to search, then it'll find that field and it'll say, well, whatever's in that field, we'll make it a string so we can compare it. And then we'll take that string and we'll compare it to the search string that we entered in. So if the make is Chevy and we put Chevy in our search box, then they'll match. If they match, then it's going to return that object back to us. So that's how we'll be able to search the make, the model, the year, or whatever else you decide to put in your object. Now, the only thing you got to really watch here is if it doesn't return anything, if there's no objects that match, it'll drop down past your while loop. And then you need to return something, and you can't just return a null, or even just taking an object, like a blank string or something like that. You have to return the object type that it's expecting. So you take the same code that we used to create our new instance of the object up in the while loop up here. When we created my object and we created a new instance of the object, oops, this one. We take that code and we put it down here. And what that does is it creates a new object of whatever object type we sent through. So a car, it creates a new object of car, and there's just no information in it. So your make, your model, and your year will be there, but there will be nothing in any of those things. And you return that back, and it's just a blank object. So then it comes back and says, yeah, I got an object back, but it's just blank. There's nothing in it, so we didn't find anything. And then you don't have any error codes. So that's it for searching for a record. Now we do need to build the database field. We created the database field down here with real simple database stuff, but we didn't actually build it. So rather than putting that code anywhere else, we put it right here. And all this is just a public method, and it's going to return back a database field. So it's going to be handlers database field. So when we go into handlers, it'll actually call directly to the database field. That's what it's going to return back, and we'll call it build field object. And we need to enter in two things. We need to enter in the type, and we need to enter in the name of the field that we want. So in our case, it would be make, and then string, model, string, or year, integer, whatever you want to do. So then we just have variable field, my field equals a new database field, and the name of the field name equals the name that we're passing in, and the field type equals TP that we're passing in. Then we just return that field once it's loaded. So then we have a field. Now TP is a little bit, it's not real intuitive. We want people to know what it is that we're looking for. So you just add a summary to the beginning of this, and then you can put in, type of field, example integer, varchar, etc., and the name of the field, and it tells it that it builds a field in the database. So when you're using it from somewhere else, the IntelliSense should bring that up, just like it brings up the other information here, and lets you know that that you need to pass in right here, type of value in field, example field, integer, varchar, etc., and then your name of the field. Okay, so now we have that created here. Everything's all together. That's all of our external methods. Now we have left is our internal methods, our convert object to string. And we go into here, and this is very close to our original conversion of object to string. The only difference is we will need to enter in, pass through the object type that we're going to be using, again, because we don't know it, and we're going to pass in our object of that type. And those are the only two things we need to pass in. It all starts the same. We start with our string content. We make sure it's empty. And then we're going to create our JavaScript through the Java serializer. And that's just where it's given us our red line here, because we need to add our using statement for serialization JSON. That takes care of that. And then that's of type my object type. So it's going to pull the object type right into there and know what object type to make it from. Then we add it to the memory stream. We write the memory stream. We go back to position 0 of the memory stream. We read the memory stream and put it into our content. We read it to the end, and then we just return our content. So the content will be a string that we return back. And that's it. Now to convert the string back to an object, we are going to return the object of my object type, whatever type we sent in. And here's where we're going to send it in to let them know what object type it's going to be. And we need the string that we're actually going to convert. And we need my object path again. This is that fully qualified path to the model. so that it knows exactly what kind of a object it needs to build. And when we look at the actual creation here, we start by creating a new object, a new instance of the object, just like we did earlier. Create a new instance of my object path. That's why it needs that. Then we create our Java string here and use our serializer to serialize the type of my object type. We do need to do just as we did before. We have to get the encoding of the byte array. So we create a byte array. It's encoding UTF-8. We get the bytes and we add that to my object string. Then we have our memory stream where we read in the byte array. And we have our object where we take the object.gs and we read it into the memory stream. And then we just have to return our object back. So then it took our string that we entered in and turned it into an object and sends it back. And that is all the code for our database file. Now that everything looks okay there, we only have 3 errors left. We can close that out and go back to our main page XAML. Now our main page XAML is going to change around quite a bit, and there's a little bit more coding to do here, but it's going to be a little bit more intuitive, and we're going to compact it down so that you can get to everything that you need simply and find exactly what you're looking for. So we just have our constructor. And in our constructor, right when this page loads up, the first thing we want to do is create our new database. So we're going to add in create database. Of course, we don't have this method yet, but we will. But since this is the only thing we need to put in here, just so we get that knocked out of the way and we can move along. Now after our constructor, we're going to create a couple of regions. I'm going to create these regions quick and then I will be right back to show them to you. Okay, so hopefully that didn't take me too long. Just remember that you can pause the video at any time when I show this to you and then type in these and catch up as far as the typing goes. I just figure you don't want to sit there and listen to me typing for 20 minutes. It's just a little easier this way. We're going to create 2 regions, 2 main regions. One is buttons and one is database tools. Now, under database tools, we're going to have declarations. We're going to have create database, write to database, and read from database. So that should sound familiar. It's just set up exactly like our database file is. And then under read from database, we're going to have return all records and search records, just like we had over there. Now, I already have the code in here to make it a little bit easier to understand what's going on, but we'll go through it here and I'll try to explain it the best I can. So here we have our buttons inside of our region. This is just our pinouts from each button, which we already have down here. Our button add to database, retrieve. We're going to need 3 buttons instead of 2 to demonstrate this. We're going to need to change our actual front end a little bit in order for this to work. So let's go to the front end page and change our design a little bit to make it match what our back end says. Okay, this is currently our front page, and while it works fine the way it is, just to be able to show you everything, I want to be able to add a few things to here, and we're going to just make it look a little bit different. Again, just to save time, I'm going to copy in the code for this for our grid here. So I'm just going to copy in the new grid and then we'll go over it and I'll show you the differences. Okay, for my new example, I'm changing it from 5-inch phone. I'm going to change it up to 23-inch desktop just to give us a little bit more room and so that you can see what's going on a little bit better. I just have to change our vantage point here so we can see what's going on. And it's similar to what we had before. There's not quite as many actual text fields. But we all have 3 buttons now. The first button will be btn get all records. Then we have our search button, which is btn search records. And then we have our add record button, which is btn add record. Now, for each one of these, normally you would just double click it and it would give you your click event, and then that would show up on your code behind page. However, I already have those pinouts in here. So if you're just copying this code, you can just copy these pinouts in and you'll be fine. So you can either copy them in or just double click to make them show up on your background page. Okay? As long as those are linked to the background page and to your buttons, then you're good to go. Then what I did was I added a combo box here, which I named CB Search. And in this combo box, I went into Items Collection. And in here, down at the bottom, you don't want it to be a button. You want it to be a string. So we're going to go to Other Type. We're just going to type in string. And this will give you all the definitions of string. You just want system runtime system string. That's just a basic string. You click OK. And now it'll show string. And when you add a new string, it'll come up, and the only option you're going to have, property you're going to have, is a blank space where you can type in whatever string you want to type in. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of the extra one. Under my first string, I'm going to type in make, capital M-A-K-E. Second string is going to be model, capital M-O-D-E-L. Now those are to correspond with thing here. We're going to either search by make or we're going to search by model. So by typing them in here as a string, that restricts it enough so that whoever's doing the search can't mistype that. It's either going to be for the make or it's going to be for the model. You could also add year if you wanted to. And then next to that, that's all you need to do. Just click OK, and then you'll have that box all set up. Next to it, we have a text box, and this is just called TB search. So this is going to be whatever text, like Chevy, Ford, Toyota, whatever make we want to search for. And this, the user will actually type in whatever they want to search for. And then they'll be able to hit search. It'll use our database information, our database method to search for, in this field, for this text. Then we have a text block, and we just named this TB results. That's just basically there for our testing. You can put it there as like a status of what's going on to let the user know what's going on. In our case, we're going to use it for that part where we return the string back from when we created our database, so that we know, we can see exactly what it created. Then we have our maker, model, and our year, just like we did before. These are just text boxes. It's TB make, TB model, and TB year. Again, you want to make sure that you have a 0 in TB year, as it's text, not an O, just a 0, because it's going to look for an integer, and we want to make sure that nobody accidentally types in a letter. Then again, this is not a full-blown program for production. This is just to show you how to do this, so I'm not going to go into all the aspects of making sure that it's an actual integer. We're just going to do this to remind ourselves when we're doing this. And then lastly, we have this real big list view, and we made it as big as we could make it with the rest of the room that we have, so we can list out all the records we have. And it's LV records, that's all it's called, and that's all you need is the name, and then set up your size however you want it. And that's all we're going to need for the front end. So we'll save that, and we'll close the front end. Now, we no longer need these old button pinouts because we have the new buttons. So we can take these old button pinouts and we can delete them. And then now we'll have our new one. So we have our get all records click, we have our button search click, and we have our add record click. And we'll start with this and follow it through the path. That way you can see exactly where everything is leading to. So the first thing we want to do is take our LV records, which is our list view that we just created, .items.clear. So we want to wipe out anything that's in there from any other buttons that were pressed, any other searches that were done. I'm going to make sure it's clear. And then we want to go to our return all records method, which we will find in our database tools when we go through that. And that'll just go in there, it'll find all the records and list it out onto our list view. So we'll see how that works in a minute. And then we have our search records, and like I said, here again you have your list view. You want to clear that out first. And then we want to find out if tbsearch.text equals nothing, then we want to bounce back to our results text box. You must enter text to search. So we want to make sure that they have something in there before we try to do a search. And if they don't, and we put this message up, we'll just return back out of here and wait for them to put something in and try again. If they do, then we're going to search records, and we're going to pass in the combo box search selected item .toString. So that's the make and model, those strings that we added into the combo box. And we're also going to pass through, and this will be our field, by the way, our search field to search. And then we're also going to pass in the text to search, which is your tbsearch text.text. And that's all we need for that. Then it'll search for the record, it'll find the record, and it'll bring back the record that we're looking for. And we'll see how that works then. And then lastly, we have our add record. And all we're going to do here is call a method called write record. We don't have to pass anything to it. Okay, so now we have our build car object here, which is going to be all this code is going to be rewritten, but we know that we don't need convert string to object because we now have that on our database folder. So we can delete that. We know we don't need convert object to string because that's in our database class. So we can delete that. We can delete the comments here. Okay, and basically this is what we're left with. We're left with a object builder for car. We're left with a write string to database, and we're left with a get object from database. Now we're not going to need these for right now, so we can take these and we can just get rid of them. And we'll go through our database tools. So under database tools, the first thing we have is our declaration. Now declaration is set up here so that we can get some information into our database class for our new app that we have to use. And we are going to just pin them out here so that we only have to change them in one place. So for our table name, string table is our table name, and we just add in our car info right here one time. The field name is going to be car. So we have our car, we have our table name, and we have our field name that we want to add. It's going to be car. And in our case, most cases, it's going to be navarchar when you're doing this for the object, because that's what it's going to be saving the JSON text as. So you don't need to send that in, but we have the name of the file here. And here is our object path. This is that path that we needed to make sure we have a fully qualified path to the object. So our fully qualified path in our app now is object to SQLite UWP. And you'll notice this is wrong here. So we need to correct this. Object to SQLite UWP. Oops. To make sure that that's exactly right. And .models.car. And this is object to SQLite UWP. Okay? So just like I changed it there, you'll have to change it for whatever app you're going to pass it into. And then we have an object type. And this type, we can make it type of models car. Okay? So it's just be OB type. So once we have that all set up, you'll see how we can use that throughout the rest of the programming. So first thing we're going to do is create a database. We hit our button up top, or I meant we go through our constructor up top, and it's going to call create database. So we have create database, and we want to go to handlers. Now I had it for where I pulled my code from, it was called database tools. So what I'm going to do is just change this really quickly. So that should take care of our issues, takes care of all of our errors, and I can explain it better. So we're creating a new database object. So a new one of these, and we're just going to call it DBT. So every time we need this for a separate thing, we'll have to create a new instance of it because it's inside of here. So this is a new handlers database. Then we want to create a new database field, which is your database field right here. And we're going to call that my field. And then we're going to go and we're going to call database DBT, so it's database tools is what it's short for when I had it called database tools. So it's dbt dot build field object. Okay, so that was the database builder that we had for our field, and we're gonna pass in varchar because we always know it's going to be in the varchar for this particular type of object, and the field name. So whatever field name we want to use, which it's going to pull from up here, field name car. Okay, and then it's going to return back results in our results box, and it's going to say DBT again, and it's going to call our create database method that we created in our database right here, and that's going to return back a string. So that's why we're putting it in our results text, and we just need to pass it the name of our table, so table, and the name of the field, or the actual field object that we just created. So we're going to send that object field, and that will create our database. It'll send back a text showing us the SSQL statement that it created, and it'll display that on our main page for us. So if that's correct, I should be able to run this. Okay, it brings it up, and as soon as it comes up, I don't have to touch anything because it went to the constructor and it called create database, and it created the database, and it shows us here, this is our SSQL statement that it created, which is create table if not exist car info. So we know it's a table called car info. Our ID integer primary key auto increment not null, and here it put in car and a varchar and says it's not null. Okay, so that did that automatically. We didn't have to hit any buttons or anything like that. All we did was start the app, and that's taken care of. So that's how we call that. Now we go to write database, and now we want to write to the database an object. So in order to write a record, we have to create a new copy of our database. So we'll call that database tools, or DBT. And then we have to create an object to send. So we need a variable my car, and instead of having new car object or something like that, we just are calling the method build car object, which we have right here. And all this does is takes the my car of it's a new model of car, and then we put in the make from our TB make text, the model from our TB model text, and the year from our TB year text, which was down here almost exactly the same. We just return my car then, and we have our object. So once everything's filled out on the page, we take that information on the page, we put it into the object, and we have our object. Okay, so once it built that, then we go back to our database tools on our database, and we're going to call write record. And write record, we have to pass in my object type. So now you're going to be able to see where this comes from. My object type is type models car. Models car. So now it knows that it's sending up to our database class, and it's saying, hey, we want to create, we want to take a object of a car, and this is what we want to work with. And now we have one that we built, so we're going to send you an object of car, which is my car. And now we want you to take that, convert that into text, and then save that text. So now it knows to do that. It just needs to know your table name. So there's table again from the top. So it's going to take car info, and then it's going to build your field object again, and make sure it's a varchar and field name from the top, just like it did when it created the database. So now it knows what field name and what type of field name it's going to convert it to, and then that will convert it into a it'll use the conversions. It'll convert that object into a string, and it'll take that string and it'll write it to the database, and that's all there is to it. So now you can see how this can be used in any app. You can change this to anything you want. You can change this to a different field name. You can change it to a different object, and it'll all work the same way. You just have to make sure that you're changing your object, you know, what type of object it is for everything in the program, or in this code. This is the code that has to be adapted for whichever app you're using it in. Okay, and then the hard stuff, reading your records. So we're going to read all records by creating a method called read all records, or return all records. And this has a variable of my car list, and it's going to equal new list of model's car. So now we know we have a new list of these cars, and it's empty. And then we create our database tools again. So it's a new handlers database. And then we could take my car list and we want to populate it. So we take our database tools and we want to return all records. And now we know it's going to return a list of cars, because right here we're telling it that the type is model car, and we know it's going to return back to us a list of model car, and my car list is a list of model car. So it's just going to make a list and make this equal that list. And we just have to pass in the table name, the field name, and the object path. And remember, that has to be a fully qualified path to the object. Then when we get it back, we want to take this list of cars and we want to put it into our list view. So we have a list of objects. We had objects returned to us here. So for each model car, and we'll call that my car, in my list of cars, we want to add that to our list view. So list view item add, and then here you can flesh this out any way that you like. I just have it model or make colon, and it'll be the name of the make, model colon, name of the model, year colon, and then I just put spaces in here to make sure that they're not butt up against each other. And just keep in mind, like for year, you want to make sure that you change that to a string, because it's actually going to come back as an integer, and an integer can't show up in a text box. So once you have that set up, it'll just list out each individual thing. So if that works, we should be able to run this. And I did forget to show the writing too. So to write this, let's say we're going to do Chevy Nova, and then 1972, let's say, and we hit add record. It should go through. Now you don't really see anything. It should go through fine. But now if I go Ford F-250 2017 and add record, okay. Now I just click on get all records, and if get all records works, what do you know? We have, and there were some in here. I already had a file created, but which are what all these are about. But the last two that I put in here are Chevy Nova year 1972 and Ford model F-250 year 2017. So it works, and you can see all the records that are there. Now we want to be able to search all these records to find the one that we want. So now this is, again, just a simple example. So basically this is going to just return back the first item on the list that has the specific information that you're looking for. So if there's more than one item on the list that has that info, you're only going to get the first one. Okay. So here we create a car list again, a list of model cars. And we create a new database tools out of from handlers database, so new DBT. And then we take our mycar, and we create a new variable called mycar, and we equal that to our database tools search for records. We know we want to search for the object being models car, and then we want to send the table name, the field name, the object path, the field to search, and the search text. Okay, now the field to search is your combo box, and the search to text is the search box next to it. So that's where these two come from. And they're passed into here, right here. And I did this for a reason, just to help you see that this is getting pulled from there, this is getting pulled from here. But they're all getting pulled from your button click. So when we search, this is when we check our TB search text to make sure it's got something, and then we send our combo box selected item, and we send our search text to here, and then this pulls it down through. Okay, so we send that up, and that will return us back a record of my car. Okay, then we take list view items and add, and we'll just add that one car the same way. It's my car, so we'll just put mycar.make, mycar.model, mycar.year to string. There's actually a goof on this one. If I'm not mistaken, we don't need this line because we don't need a car list. We're getting back an individual car. Okay, and if that works, which I just commented it out in case it doesn't, but we'll see. So we want to go make, and we'll say Ford, and we'll search Ford F250 2017. Okay, we can also do model. Now here's the funny one. I think, if I remember right, okay, they're both Nova. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do Chevy Camaro 1982, let's say. Okay, let's see, get all records. Camaro's there now. Okay, so we'll go here and we'll put again Nova, and we'll see one Nova, even though there's two. It'll be the first one on the list, and then we can make this Camaro and search, and it'll bring up Camaro. But if I put in Chevy, it's just going to bring me the first Chevy record, which is Nova. So you see how it's a very simplistic thing. You have to go in and build it up a little bit bigger to be able to search out specifics. You could bring it in as a my car list instead of the individual ones, and you could create your searches through there. Or you can create a better search in the actual database folder itself, if you like, or in the class itself. But now then all you need to do to pass this on to another app is copy the database folder into a handlers folder of your new app. Make sure that you have these items ready. Make sure that you have your name, the name of your qualified path correctly, and then you can use these to actually call whatever you want, and then just change it from car to plane, train, automobile, whatever you want to make it for whatever app you're doing. And that's pretty much it. Now you have something that you can take along with you to a new app, and shouldn't be too much to implement. What I would do is I would take these two, I would copy these into the new page, and you could even do, if you wanted to, put a note here to be sure to add this code to app.xaml.cs, and then pull this information over. Now you could do this here, or you could do this in your in your database file. If you wanted to be able to have everything in your database file, that's probably the best place to do it. Go to your handlers, go to database, and take this code, shrink all this down so that you have it, and then just put a comment like at the end or at the beginning somewhere, and say, be sure to put this code in your app CS. Oops. I did a copy and paste there. Go to your app CS, copy the code, drop that in here, and just comment it out so that you know that that's the code that you want to make sure it gets put in. And then you can also say, this code goes into the calling file or main page .xaml, whatever works for you. And then you can take your main page, take this stuff, copy that, drop it in here. It looks like a whole lot, but you're not going to be able to drop your regions down smaller, most likely. So you just highlight it all, comment it, and then you can just shrink the comment down if you want to. But then you have all the code that you need, and you'll know what you need to change and everything. And you make whatever other comments you want to make, you can add into there. And that way, the only thing that you actually need to copy to your new app is your database class file, and make sure that it goes into a handlers folder. And then everything else is here for you to drop into the rest of your app, and you know what's going on, and you can get it working from there. So I hope this helps you take a simple idea of saving an object into SQLite. You save it to a real simple file. You put everything, all your objects into one object, save it into a file. You can pull them out and you can search through them and use them directly as objects. You don't have to worry about converting it to a string and converting it back. It's done for you. You send in an object, you get an object back. It's real simple. And then it also gives you the idea of when you're doing an app or you're doing a solution like this, when you find the solution, create it into a class, make the class as compact as possible, and make it something that you can just take from here and use in other apps instead of having to rebuild it every time. Later on down the road, you're going to forget how this works. You're going to forget how everything is done. So make sure that you comment through everything the best you can so that you understand what's going on. As you follow along in the video, after you have the entire thing all typed out for yourself, go back through it, watch the video again, listen to the explanations of the different items, and put in comments for the explanations so that you can understand it later. We really want to build the comments out of your database in your database class so that you can go back here when you don't remember anything about it and all you remember is you want to save it to a SQL file and you have an object you want to save there. Go in there, follow your instructions, copy the database file in, follow the instructions, get it set up for your new app, and you're ready to go. And then add this to your toolbox. Keep a toolbox for yourself. Keep a folder where you keep all these little gadgets that you build. And as time goes by, you build yourself up a portfolio. Other people need apps done. You go through and you have the tools that you need to build them and build them quickly. And then, this is a basic platform. It can be built out to whatever you need. And it can be mixed and matched with other classes, whatever you need to make the app work. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, leave comments down below. Please like the video so I can keep making these. And until next time, keep smiling.